Welcome to Shifting Energy. I'm Steve Schoffstall with Sprott Asset Management. It's great to have you watching. We're very excited to be joined by special guest Ernest Scheyder on today's show. Ernest is a senior correspondent at Reuters covering the clean energy transition in critical minerals. His latest book is titled The War Below, Lithium, Copper, and the Global Battle to Power Our Lives, and is an editor's pick for Best Book of the Year so far in 2024 on Amazon. Ernest, we're glad to have you joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Steve.
In The War Below, you focus on a set of 5 critical materials. Could you tell us a little bit about what these metals are and why they're so critical to the transition to cleaner energy?
Certainly. So the book looks at a category of roughly 5 critical minerals. That is lithium, copper, cobalt, nickel, and rare earths. And certainly I want to say right off the bat that there are many, many critical minerals out there that have broad uses across our global economy. But for me, when I was telling this story, I wanted to pick those 5 because those tend to be most widely used, especially in our global electrification transition. Lithium, of course, is the anchor of the lithium-ion battery. It's the lightest metal on the periodic table of elements, and it's really good at retaining a charge. So that makes it the perfect metal for use in a battery. Copper, of course, is used in wiring, in a host of electronics and motors, et cetera, in the lights in your ceiling, in the microphones with which we're talking to each other right now. Copper is nearly ubiquitous in so many electronic devices out there. So it was really important to include that. Nickel and cobalt can have various uses in batteries, depending on the chemistry design of a battery. Cobalt can help reduce what's known as thermal runaway, or the spontaneous combustion of a lithium-ion battery, which I should say is very rare, but cobalt can make it even rarer. Nickel can help extend the range of a lithium-ion battery. And then rare earths are a grouping of roughly 17 minor metals on the periodic table of elements that are not really as rare as their name implies. The good analogy I like to give is they're sort of like the pepper to a steak. So you wouldn't use a lot of them. You'd use small amounts, but they can have a huge impact when used in the right area. A good consumer example is the device that makes your cell phone vibrate is made from a magnet that's made with rare earths. Now, there are no known substitutes yet, and so you can see how these are used across the global economy. They're also, of course, used in electric vehicles. The thing that turns power into motion in an electric vehicle is a magnet made from rare earths. So for The War Below, I wanted to look at these broad classifications, as I say, not to be, to say that the list is exhaustive, but to really bring to the reader these 5 main groupings and explore where, how, and why they're produced not only in the United States, but in the world.
Thanks for that explanation. China has been a leader in producing many of these critical materials over the last several decades. And how is this impacting the market, and what are the U.S. and Western governments doing to help level that playing field?
One of the tension points that I explore in The War Below is how the United States really helped start or helped build up many of these modern critical mineral supply chains in the 20th century. Certainly with rare earths in the years after World War II, the U.S. invested a lot in the science and the know-how to be able to prop up that industry. The interest, though, began to wane in the latter part of the 20th century in the United States and many Western countries, just as interest began to rise in China. Beijing began to invest heavily in not only the extraction and processing of critical minerals, but also the education of them. And so where you are today is you have many, many universities throughout mainland China that are studying mining engineering and related sciences, whereas you only have about 12 or 13 in the United States. And unfortunately, mining is just not considered an appealing career for many young people right now, the way that it once was 50, 75 years ago. And so in the United States and in many countries in the West, there's a looming career cliff coming where folks are going to start retiring en masse in 10, 15, 20 years from the mining industry, bringing up key questions about who will run the mines of the 21st century for the West. And that's an extreme problem because we obviously need many, many more of these critical minerals to power this global energy transition. So China, by recognizing the importance of the space, invested not only, as I say, in the extraction and processing, but in the know-how. Just at the same time, many countries in the West, especially the United States, invested a lot less in them. And today we're seeing the ramifications of those decisions across our global economy.
That's a great segue into the next question. If you look at the U.S. mining industry, it's really emerging from a long period of underinvestment. Deloitte survey from 2023 revealed that nearly 50% of mining engineers are expected to retire over the next decade. We also see studies from McKinsey and PwC that have a similar conclusion. And it points to us reaching a shortage in miners at such a critical time when we're really trying to secure our supply chain. How do you think that's going to impact the United States' ability to secure the supply chain over the longer term?
Well, Steve, I want to maybe answer the question with a bit of an anecdote. Freeport-McMoRan, the largest copper producer in the United States and one of the largest copper producers in the world, in the year 2022, at the end for its discussing its 2022 results, made a bit of an announcement. Its copper production fell in the United States not because of weather or other natural disasters, not because of a supply chain shortage or its inability to get key equipment or products to extract the copper, but because it didn't have enough people. Now, that was amazing for one of the world's largest companies to admit that it couldn't get enough people to extract this key building block for our global energy economy. And I think when you look across the world, it can be different depending on various countries. There are certainly operations that the same company has in South America and in other parts of the world in Asia where they do not have that labor shortage. But in the United States, because they didn't have enough people power, their copper production fell. And I think that is a warning for many countries that are looking to increase their use of these electronic gadgets and gizmos that are built with critical minerals. Electric vehicles don't grow on trees, neither do cell phones or the cameras with which we're talking to each other right now. They're built with critical minerals, and those critical minerals have to be extracted from somewhere. And so the fact that right now in the West, we are not really making mining an interesting career or an appealing career for many of the young people has long-term implications for where, how, and why we get the building blocks for this new energy economy that we're creating. We saw in the 20th century that whoever controlled crude oil really was in control of the global economy. And now in the 21st century economy, whoever controls the production of these critical minerals, copper, lithium, nickel, cobalt, rare earths, and others will really control this 21st century economy. And that's intrinsically tied to labor and to the person power needed to get this stuff out of the ground and to process it.
I'd like to finish with one last question. It's probably on a lot of people's minds. I know it is across the investment community, but where we sit today, we're less than 3 months away from the U.S. presidential election. What impact do you think the results of that election will have on the United States' policy as it relates to critical materials?
Steve, you've saved the easiest question for last, so thank you for that. I would say let's look at the benefit of experience here and experience of both major U.S. candidates in office. Certainly with the Inflation Reduction Act, we know that Vice President Harris, as part of the Biden administration, was a key supporter of the IRA. And in fact, in the U.S. Senate, Vice President Harris cast the tie-breaking vote for the IRA. So it seems fairly clear to say that Vice President Harris supports the IRA and would, if elected in November, continue its implementation. We also have the benefit of former President Trump's 4 years in office from 2017 to 2021 and looked at how he governed from a tariff perspective, from an energy perspective, from a renewable energy perspective. And granted, the electrification thematic has definitely revved up, if you'll forgive the pun, the past 4 years. And we do have the IRA now. And President Trump has made several comments about the IRA, as well as his views on electrification. But I think regardless of who wins the U.S. election in November 2024, we do know that this thematic isn't going away, that it's not just going to shift wildly depending on who's elected in Washington. The ubiquity of all of these electronic gadgets and gizmos is not going away. And this is about so much more than just transportation. So just take the EV part out of it. So much of our everyday lives now are involving the use of electronic devices, especially ones powered by lithium-ion batteries that perhaps weren't even 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so when we just look across your house, Steve, all the devices that you have that are electronic now that might not have been before, those are all built with critical minerals. And so regardless of politics, in general, the global economy is moving in this direction. And so it underlines and underscores the stark need for more of this critical minerals production out there. And for us to be collectively thinking through, okay, are there some places that are too special to mine? Are there places where we would allow mining? What does good mining standards look like? And that way we can speak with one voice to our elected officials in the United States, whether that be, a Vice President Harris or a former President Trump, should either be elected. And then we can have a cohesive and collaborative discussion around these, because we're not really having those discussions right now. And part of the reason I wrote The War Below was because I really wanted Americans and citizens across the world in their home countries to be debating these really, really key issues around critical mineral production and extraction.
Well, thank you for that. And that's all we have time for today. So thank you, Ernest, for the valuable insights.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Steve.
So that'll do it for today's episode of Shifting Energy. To learn more about the investment strategies and ETFs dedicated to the critical materials investment opportunity, you can head over to SprottETFs.com, where you can find monthly commentaries, videos, and other research dedicated to all things critical materials. Again, I'm Steve Schoffstall with Sprott Asset Management, and thank you for joining. We'll see you on the next episode of Shifting Energy.